The Top 100 Clubhouse podcast is brought to you by Eden Mill, bringing the tradition of distilling whiskey and gin back to St Andrews, the home of golf. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Top 100 Clubhouse, the ultimate podcast for golf course enthusiasts worldwide. I'm your host, James Henderson, and we're about to embark on a journey through lush fairways and breathtaking landscapes, as well as delving deep into the minds of fascinating individuals from every corner of the golfing universe. Get ready to explore the world's top golf courses through the eyes of those who know them best. This week on the Top 100 Clubhouse, we have David Davis. David Davis is one of the few people to have completed the top 100 golf courses in the world. He's also part owner of the top100golfcourses.com and is in charge of our Lockhart travel club. Enjoy. Hello, David. How are you?
James, thanks. I'm very good, thank you.
It's great to have you on as a fellow top 100 golf courses employee or owner, part owner.
Definitely. Interesting to follow the trend and the theme of all these great guests that you've been having on, and try to talk about interesting stuff, right?
Well, you've got plenty of interesting things to say. I know that for a fact. So, how did you actually get the golf bug? What drove you into it?
So I've told the story a number of times. I was really late to golf. I was coming out of an intense. I have an intense tennis background where I had dreams of being a professional tennis player. Played through Division I in the U.S. I avoided golf for a long time because I said golf is for old people, and one day I'll be old and then I'll join in, and And I thought like I hear a lot of young people say, and I laugh at it when they say things like, I mean, how tough could the sport be? The ball doesn't move; it's sitting there. You don't run around. There's no like physical exercise in it. And look at these heavy guys that are so good at the sport. I mean, make them go out and run or chase a ball around and see how that works. But anyway, I was wrong, just like all those young people are, and naive and didn't know. And eventually, what happened was that I was going through in the early 2000s. I was going through a divorce, living overseas in a foreign country, living in the Netherlands where I currently live, and I found myself all of a sudden having a lot of time on my hands, time that I had been spending with my two daughters who were really young, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I wanted to fill up that time, and finally, through business, I ran into a buddy of mine in Luxembourg, actually an old tennis guy, and he'd went over to the dark side or the light side, however you want to look at it, into golf. And he finally dragged me. He didn't even give me a choice because I told him no several times, and he said, "Okay, come on, let's go." And I jumped in the car with him after we had a business meeting, and he drove straight to a driving range, put a driver in my hand, and he said, "Okay, here you go." Hit a couple of home runs, and I did just that, and I was like, damn, this is going to be the next thing that I will not be able to get out of my hands. And here we are, 23 years later, 23 years later. And he was right. And that's my first thought was exactly that. So it was serving a lot of purposes for me in that moment.
Well, it does come naturally to tennis players, doesn't it? There seems to be a similarity in the movement. I know a lot of very good tennis players who are golfers.
Some guys make the transition better than others, absolutely, and I would agree with some of those with some of those comments. And I think it can get you to like a single handicap pretty quickly if you're a pretty good level tennis player and you put in the time, because it's time and repetition and practice, obviously, as everybody would know. Well, that's when you lack like a lot of talent, which I do, of course. But so. I think that so getting to single digit handicap seems great, but actually in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of nothing. So that hand-eye coordination and, the knowing how to get into something and practice a lot and do the repetition and learn how to do something consistently. I think that's what helps tennis players to be good at it because they've been through it with a different sport. But getting to be really good at it, like some of the guys get down to scratch or better, that's totally different. I think tennis may not help you to do that. I think it helps you get a good start, and the rest of it is how much can you adapt to golf, literally.
Well, how did you become? So, how did you go from playing essentially hitting a couple of drives with your first few swings to playing all the top 100 golf courses in the world?
Yeah,
like that's
a big. There's a big transition. So, and obviously there's a story behind that. Right in the beginning, with golf, I went out and bought my first clubs, all that stuff, just jumped right into it. And I have this, as a lot of these guys that, play a lot of courses or play a lot of golf or whatever, a lot of us have this kind of obsessive compulsive personality where you start to do something and you can't be satisfied with it unless you do it more and more and more. And you think, I got to get good at this. I have to be able, I don't want to do it. It's not fun if I can't be good at it. So I'm the same way. I was like that with every sport. So I started with golf, and I had all this time, these gaps of time when I was used to seeing my kids, and I couldn't do that, so I had to fill that in with something else. I filled that in with golf practice, and I love practicing. So practicing and playing both. So I started doing that, and then very quick in the beginning, I thought, I asked myself, well, wait a second, I can see this going the route of being very competitive, because by nature I'm quite competitive, and wanting to play tournaments and just make it all about winning, which tennis was, whether that's good or bad, it was all about winning. If it wasn't winning, it wasn't fun, basically. And I look back at tennis and I said, I kind of ruined it like that. You ruin it as a kid when you're going through, and the only fun thing is when you win. And I think golfers can get into that same kind of like mindset. And I teetered on the fence of falling on one side or the other in the beginning. And then I just literally stopped myself and I said, wait a second, I'm putting a lot of time into this. Do I want to ruin this and make it only about winning? And that's it. And that's when it kind of hit me that golf's a lot different than tennis, right? First of all, you can go out and play on your own. You play against the course. It doesn't have to be always against somebody else. And then there's so many different aspects of it. And I was traveling a lot for business, and I thought, I'm going to start taking my clubs with me. And then very quickly, in fact, I made my first ever golf trip in first international golf trip, I should say. And that was like in 2000, I want to say it's like 2005. And I'd have to look up the exact dates because that's a while ago. But the first trip was, Old Course St. Andrews, Muirfield, North Berwick, Golden No. 1, Carnoustie, Kings Barnes, and then the Fairmont, the Devlin and the Sturtevant course at the Fairmont. So imagine that's the first exposure that you have to like real golf, like really good golf, right? And so then I was just completely blown away. And I think it took me months to try to realize what just happened, because there was no appreciation going into that prior. Like, okay, so big deal. I was arranging it for a buddy of mine's father who'd retired in the U.S. He'd been in golf his whole life and never took a trip overseas. And I offered to arrange that trip for him. And he said, when it happened, we were in Chicago, and he asked his wife, he said, oh, hey, Pat, David just invited me to come overseas and go on this trip. And I was living in the Netherlands at the time. And she said she didn't believe it, right? And she just said, yeah, okay, sure, Tom, whatever, do what you want, And then I called him, and I don't know if he believed it either, but I called him 6 months later, and I'd arranged this trip, and without knowing anything. I just went at it. That was back in the day when you could arrange, tee times at Muirfield. They didn't have to be 5 years in advance or whatever. You could do that online and at the beginning. And so I was able to get all these tee times, and we went on this trip, and I was completely blown away. I even managed to arrange a lunch for us at the R&A, which is that's on the first golf trip I ever took. And so if that doesn't get you into the game, I mean, I don't know what's going to get into the game, basically, right?
No, nothing would.
Exactly. So I went away from that, and mind blown, taking the next couple of months and saying, like, that is so addictive. I mean, I just love that, and I couldn't get over how different all the golf courses were to what I was seeing here in the Netherlands. And I was not playing great courses at the time either, just the local track that's close by. I mean, and then I realized, hey, this is kind of like this is kind of like any kind of passion that somebody gets into, there's varying levels of this, and there's a connoisseur level where you can combine things like travel and architecture and all this stuff that was so different, and that's what got me going in this direction, basically. So without even thinking, logically thinking about it outside of that, I just said, I'm going to start bringing my clubs and try to play, the best courses I can find wherever I'm going. And then I got into in the late 2000s. I met the guys from Top 100 and talked to them about doing. They asked me, "Oh, you're traveling all around doing this stuff. Would you be interested to do this first in the Netherlands? To look at courses and help us write up the reviews on the courses and see how you like it and see how that goes." And so I started doing that, and then really quickly, started doing all the things you do, reading all the books, and at the time I was looking at Golf Club Atlas a lot as well. That a lot of people go there to kind of get their fill of like that real nerdy section of golf course architecture, basically. And I did that as well, and spent a lot of time reading other people's thoughts and reviews and reading stuff from architects and connecting with architects and meeting them and spending time on site in when they were building or renovating and all that type of stuff. And I love doing that. And I did that I've done that for many, many years and had a lot of cool opportunities to do that. So that drives that initial passion forward.
Out of interest, did you have any artistic background at all? Because you tend to find a lot of architects, golf architects, would have an artistic background. Did you have are you an artistic man, or?
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no with I grew up with music and there was some art in there, but at a certain point in the school system I was in, the U.S. school system, literally I had to choose between you can play baseball or basketball, or you can do music or do art, and I chose sports. So I was always into sports basically after that.
So kind of the worlds collide in golf course architecture, though, doesn't it?
It does. There's no doubt about
it. So you have been with Top 100 for quite a while. Then you've been working around, and you've kind of put the Netherlands on the map in terms of golf course architecture. And when you first started, what was the world thinking of Holland golf?
They weren't. Well, a couple of corrections there. I think I played a role. Look, I don't want to take credit for that, because Harry Colt put and Charles Hugh Allison put the Netherlands on the map. Yeah. Let's hope, right? It's just that then they sealed that package and hid it away so that nobody else would know about it, and very happily so, I think, for a long time. I would say that it wasn't on anybody's radar. There were some people here that were trying to, slowly promote it. And I'll throw like the architect Frank Pont into that mix, because I believe that served two purposes for him. One is to help promote his career as an architect, and because he helped work on some of those courses, and two, because that helps recognition as well when you let people know that there's great courses in your backyard. So I would say that from the beginning for me, when I played those courses and started playing more great courses around the world, especially like UK and Ireland, whatever, and I realized, wow, the level is astonishing for this little country, and we were very fortunate to have some very unique sand-based ground and turf here to work with. That somebody noticed somewhere along the way back when, and said, "Hey, let's get some people over here that know what they're talking about." The Harry Colts and the Charles Hugh Allisons, got them over here along the way. So there's a lot of insight in that, just to invite them over. To work with these amazing landscapes that the Netherlands was fortunate enough to have, and I think that's the biggest part. My part has been easy, because all I did was, in the beginning, volunteer my time to people that were coming and say, "Listen, you should come, and I'll be happy to take you around and host you." And I had such a love of this stuff. And golf course architecture didn't really need to say much. So it wasn't a bias thing. It's just take people out there and then watch their draw drop and go like, holy cow, I can't believe what's here. So, that stuff speaks for itself. And plus the other thing is that I think the country slowly has gone through a bit of a, like a transition into realizing more, appreciating more what they have. And that's that's a big part of it, because they started taking a different level of care of these courses, a little bit more removal of trees and stuff like that, and firming up fairways, those type of things, and bringing it back to the way it probably was back in the late 30s and early 40s and stuff like that. So I think there's, obviously, like everything, there's a combination of things, but I'm also an American over here. And a lot of these people that were really into rankings and ratings, it's easier to reach out to somebody who's got their hand up and saying, oh, I'll happily help you. And then other people saying, oh, you know what, go talk to David because he's in this country and, he's speaking our language and, he's into the same stuff we are. So I became kind of like the go-to guy here, much as you guys do in Scotland or whatever, and stuff like that.
Very good, very good. And so how, since they've come on the scene, places like Royal Hague, Japan have all risen up to top echelons of brackets and to top 100 lists. Has that been a long time coming, or has it been a process that's only recently evolved?
I think that I would say it's both of those. It's definitely been a long time coming, but it just has to do with things going from almost being like hidden gems because nobody bothered. If you think about it in the grand scheme of things, a lot of the ranking organizations are very U.S. centric. And then I'll say like a Golf Magazine or a Golf Digest, for example. Well, do you think anybody in the U.S. is sitting there thinking, well, let's go back 15 years? Are they sitting there thinking, well, let's look at the map. There's, England and Scotland and Ireland. And wow, those places are amazing. And I've always dreamt of going there. Nobody looks over at this little dot on the map next, across the pond and says, oh, you know what? What's that place? Oh, I'd love to go to the Netherlands. Well, now the people that are switched on and really into it, they do that. But nobody ever did that. I mean, let's face it, nobody did that. They would come here if they wanted to, I mean, that's not fair to say this, but I'll say, go to Amsterdam and do the things you do in Amsterdam.
Yeah, fair enough. On that note, is there any part of the world you think is underrated, underexplored, underappreciated, like Holland was?
I mean, like Holland was. Look, the most underrated golf country in the world, and I'll say this over and over, like till the end of days, probably, is England.
Yeah, fair. There's some fantastic golf there.
There is such an incredible depth of golf in England that most, like 99.9% of the people, have no idea. And I know that even myself, for example, it's highest on my list to do extensive travel in England because, I just know that all the great architects were, the great classic architects. Sorry, we're coming from there, and that was their playground, and they have left their imprint. And there's a lot more depth than what the average tourist from abroad, than, to be fair, right? Let's say U.S., Canada, Australia, whatever. There's a lot more depth than what we hear about or what we'd like to go see. Even living over here in the Netherlands, right next door, you think about the big names, while just in the whole London Heathland belt or links courses or whatever you name it, arguably the best types of golf that exist, there's a ton to offer there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that goes on to the point where how do we define these courses? How do we approach them and rate them and understand? How do we, as a company, would approach them? You've talked about it a wee bit before we started. If you were to turn up at a golf course, how would you process it?
So that's a probably multifaceted question that we could talk all night about, I suppose. But one of the things we did in the beginning when we first kind of like let's say took over Top 100 and restarted is that we went through and kind of slightly redefined our ranking criteria and what we find important. One of the things that I would say is that it depends on who you're talking to. So if somebody has never done any ranking and they're really interested in that stuff and they're looking at it, I think that it's good to kind of start with a very firm structure and literally it's almost like having a script when you're trying to learn about things, like, oh, there's all these points and I have to check this box and I have to go through all these things. And that doesn't mean you're going to get it, right? Or that you ever get it. But what that does mean, at least, is that it focuses your attention on key aspects of golf courses and what golf course architects have to go through in order to design things. Unfortunately, even those lists leave out the unknown, which is, all the demands that are put on them by developers and owners and housing developments and nature organizations and environment, and all that stuff is unknown to most people if they're not involved in a project, and that greatly complicates a course. And it's very easy for us when we're examining something to look at it and say, oh, well, they should have done this or they should have done that, or that pond there is ridiculous and all those type of things. But in fact, most of the times is they didn't have a choice. That plays a big role in it. But looking at being more specific, looking at the criteria, we broke down the criteria into a couple of different areas, and this is what we give our new panelists. And we say, look, in the beginning, it's really good, to look at these criteria and really keep that stuff in mind, and even, try to give it a number in the beginning, if you're just starting. So let's say a 0 out of 10, 10 being the best, just to try to get your mind thinking in that direction. And then we talk, we break it down between architecture, which is, routing, green complexes, bunkering, strategic use of hazards and stuff like that. Then we say strategic challenge. Well, strategic challenge could mean many things. We're defining that into, look, is it what type of course is it? Is it a parkland course where the fairways are a little bit narrower, like I won't say like a U.S. Open, but that exaggerates the point, right? Rough on the sides, pretty defined area. Or is it one of these minimalistic type of things where, courses, which is obviously the trend and has been for many years now, that there's so much width that you kind of have to play the hole backwards and work back from the green and maybe where the pin position is and stuff like that. I mean, there's things like that they like to say, what's the best angle to attack and you have the best chance of making a birdie or a par or better. So there's that type of stuff. There's variety and memorability. I think those are huge aspects of evaluating courses. If you walk off a course and you don't remember, but you don't remember any of the holes, but you had a good day, then it's probably a pretty good course. But if you don't remember any of it, either that's on you and you just have a terrible memory, or there's really not much to remember out there. I can give examples of courses that fortunately have now been renovated, just quickly, that I visited once, and then I thought, and I'll give you one that's always ranked really high, and not by me, and I'm not going to pick on that course, but it's just an example. So Woodhall Spa, I went to see Woodhall Spa. It's ranked probably top 60 in the world. I went out and played it, and it's probably the best example of what for me was like Groundhog Day, as in the Bill Murray movie. Of reliving the same thing over and over and over for like, excluding the par threes, let's say, what would it be? 14 holes, basically. That's what it felt like when I walked off the course. That's before Doak went through and renovated it. And I've not seen it. I've not seen it since then because, they removed a million trees. But what it felt like was long par 4 lined by trees after long par 4 lined by trees. And at the end of the day, one was a dog leg left and one was a dog leg right. And that's what I remember from it. So that's an example of what I mean by, memorable, basically. or not memorable, or or how that affects something. Variety is another thing. Do you play a course and does it actually challenge you to really think about it from the tee, and or do you take out driver every time? I mean, I know people that take out driver every time, with exception of par threes, no matter what, because they're more comfortable and they feel like they can shape the driver or bunt it or do all these things with it. Fine. That's not my game. So it's more fun if I am made to kind of think, well, wait a second, this is only a 300 yard par four. If I take out driver, I need to be driving the green, or it's insane that I'm trying to do that. Right. So anyway, that's a completely different situation, but that's, one of the ways that I look at it. Then there's consistency. This is, again, more a question of land. You and I spoke a little bit earlier about St. Patrick's Links, and we were talking about that. If I talk about, land consistency, to me, St. Patrick's Links is an amazing example of a very consistent wild dune landscape, and one of the most consistently wild dune landscapes that I've ever seen. Even if I go to some of the other courses that Doak or Corin Crenshaw or any of these people have designed, they're not quite at that level. So if I go to Barnbougle, I'll use that as an example because a lot of people say, oh, that's one of Doak's best. If I look at Barnbougle, then the first hole and the 10th hole and maybe the first and the second and maybe even the third hole are a little bit like connecting holes. So those connecting holes are inconsistency in land, or you wouldn't need to put a connecting hole in there, basically, or what they'd call a connecting hole. And of course, he might argue with that, but he did the best with the land that he had, and an amazing job, right? So I'm not knocking on the architecture, I'm talking about the land. So that's what consistency refers to.
I know you went to somewhere recently that I was kind of blown away by, I didn't even realize it existed, was the island.
Yeah, right.
It's got an unbelievable parcel of land. But it does have, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I was, that's been a long time coming for me, and I probably overlooked it for a long time. And there's plenty that I overlooked, right? I'm not claiming to have seen everything, or I've skimmed the surface like a lot of people do in a lot of places. So I played the island, had a wonderful day out there. That's a course that's been recently improved and renovated by Martin Ebert Ebert and McKenzie. I think Martin was there, and he put in a couple of new holes to improve the routing, and then changed some things. And I didn't have the benefit of seeing what it was like before, but I love what I see now. There's a couple of holes that I thought, wow, that's pretty narrow, like almost too much on the back nine. But they were short par fours, and if you want to hit a 7-iron off the tee because you can hit it straight, then you can play it. So, and, so that's, to me, that's fine if that's the case, but like great property, great piece of land. You're right. Absolutely. And unsung, people would laugh at me if I said hidden gem, but to me, it was a hidden gem, even though people had said, oh, you got to get here. I have people telling me I got to get there to hundreds of courses all over the world all the time. So anyway, sometimes it's true.
A consistency of land against the club would be somewhere like Port Stewart, where your back nine is just starts to flatten out at the end. So just to give an example to people.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And the thing is, it's like to me, that's one of the reasons that, and I'll talk about St. Patrick's again, because it's just such a good example and fresh example in my mind. But that's one of the reasons it's so great, because the routing that Doak and his team, Renaissance Golf, sorry, he's not alone, but the routing that Renaissance Golf created there, to me, is fabulous. Of course, I have a least favorite hole and stuff like that, like everybody else would. And one, a couple that I think, okay, do I love that? Probably not, but it doesn't matter. I mean, some people love that. We'll love that hole as well. But if I just look at that one, I say it never lets down. You don't have a lull or a moment where they put in some 600-yard par five in order to get over the other side of the train tracks or whatever.
So what's next after consistency of ground?
The last one that we have on there is conditioning. Conditioning is one that that's always directly related to money, membership and money. So I take that one to a large extent with a grain of salt. If I had to put a percentage of where would I, what percentage would I allocate to that? It's probably between, for me personally, and this is a guess, right? So don't hold me to it, 5 and 10%.
Yeah.
If we go to the U.S. and we go to the private club sector of the U.S., conditioning is like, you might as well put that as the main core focus of everything, because all the courses have a lot of money. Of course, people pay, healthy sums to be members and to for annual dues or monthly dues or whatever. And so they expect perfection. And I think they get, to a large extent, from a maintenance perspective, perfection that us in Europe or even the UK are not used to. So when we go there, that's a big impact. You can get blown away just by the fact that there's not a blade of grass out of place. So call that the Augusta effect, probably one of the things that were created by Augusta being this perfect garden. And I think that's something that has been maintained. And plus, sorry to go on and on, but the other part of that is probably because those guys own the course. So if you own it, and you're paying a healthy sum for it, then you want it to be impressive. You're going to spend your time there and your energy and your money. And if you're an owner, it's just like your home. You probably keep it in tip-top shape, and that's what they expect of the courses that they own as well.
There was someone told me that national they spend about 2 to 3 million just in added maintenance every year on the golf course.
And I wouldn't even bat an eyelash at that.
So is there anything else that you or of course is that the last one?
So that's the last one. I mean, the way I'd fill that in is that if you have somebody who's really kind of like been trying to study this stuff and reading books and has a keen interest in it and maybe a keen eye as well, which helps. And I'll add good memory, because it does help to be able to remember things or take a lot of photos or whatever it is, right? I think that generally people transition from this being able to tick the box and assign a number to things to being able to, if you've seen a lot, you can go through and kind of take some notes after you've been to a course, and you have a feeling for the whole picture as opposed to all the little parts of it. And of course, if you really want to compare 10 great courses, that's a little bit different. Then you have to sit down and really think about it and compare your notes. And then, I tend to, because you're picking at straws, right? So I tend to look at something and go, okay, so, how many world-class holes what I define as world-class holes, right? And that would be a hole that if I take from that course and I put it on another one, it's going to be one of the best holes on that course or the best hole on that course. And I could do that to any course in the world, and it's going to be like one of the best holes on that course. So how many world-class holes are on any of these courses, right? And that's an interesting way to me to look at it, because if you look at a Cypress Point or a Pine Valley or whatever, then you're going to see, well, why is Pine Valley often considered the number one course in the world, even though we rank at number 2, but a lot of people rank at number 1, right? So why is that considered the number one course in the world? Well, it has 10 holes that are, all world class, however you want to call it, holes. Mm-hmm. You take any one of those and you put them on another course, and people play that, and they get to that hole and they go like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's just when you get to Pine Valley, they're all like that. And so, you play through it. It's amazing. It's overwhelming. It's intimidating. It's all these things when you see it the first time that you might not even realize it until you've, had a chance to sit back and kind of take it in. But that's a big, to me, that's a big thing. Also things we already mentioned, variety and memorability. Can I walk off the course? I have a really, people have said to me often that I have a sick memory for little features on golf courses. So like bumps and humps and all these, little things. And people say, I can't even remember what the third hole was like. And I say, and I can say, well, I can actually picture it and go, oh, you mean the one with, the little bumps on the right side, doesn't have any bunkering, whatever, that type of stuff. And people go, yeah, whatever, you've lost your mind, type of a response. So, and I think that's just because, I found that very interesting and interesting talking points to share with other people that are really into, golf courses and golf course architecture and stuff like that.
How much of your ratings are pragmatic then? Because you've spoken very pragmatically about it there, and how much of it is controlled by your emotion when you arrive at these places like Pine Valley and Cypress, which are so there must be a different wave that you haven't felt when you turn up at these places.
So I think in the beginning, when you first see something like that, like if I go way back and say like the first time I went to St. Andrews Old Course, or like I said, that first trip, I wasn't even thinking about ranking or whatever, and I played St. Andrews Old Course, and I just thought it was a flat open field, basically. So, and I've heard other people say that as well. But look, I'll admit that that's what I thought, and I think I played it probably, at least 3 or 4 times over the course of 15 years before I kind of started to like it. And then, so I was slow to like it. Another one like that, which, people can start throwing beer bottles and stuff, it was Muirfield. I played Muirfield in that trip, but it was like April. There was no rough. It was just like this big open kind of field, and we played it. And, I liked North Berwick better. I liked even Carnoustie. I liked all the courses better than I did, Kingsbarns or whatever, Not knowing anything from that trip, I came away, and my favorite course that I played on the trip was Kingsbarns. That's a first impression from somebody who doesn't know anything. And so, Kingsbarns is like, I think it's a great course, right? But I describe it as Link's Disneyland for American tourists. And I don't mean anything negative by that. It's just designed for that. You have sea views on every hole. It's set up like that. And there's these kind of quirky risk reward holes where, hey, if I hit my drive 150 or whatever, 170 yards, it'll roll down to the green and on a par 4. So I can actually pretend like I reached a par 4, and won. So,
yeah, well, going back with stories.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, that's that's the kind of things that impacts you. But you're talking about emotional stuff. I think it plays a huge aspect in for almost everybody. I'm sure that it does to a certain extent for me as well. But I have been mindful of that for 15 years. So of course you're going to have good days and bad days or whatever. And like one of the things I did was I made a conscious effort to disassociate my enjoyment of golf with score. And I did that at a very young stage in my golf life. Rather, I said something really corny, and I said, look, my goal is to be the best playing partner I can be to the people I'm with. So if everybody has fun, it's going to be amazing, right? And so that's actually the first goal that I set for myself. It wasn't anything else. It was like, okay, rather than trying to win, and going back to what we said earlier, right? Rather than trying to win, I want to have fun. And so I want to be the best playing partner I can possibly be for all these people. And even like, I put on my Instagram account, and this is true, like another guy just had a hole-in-one I was playing with. And I've had more hole-in-ones, not me, but the people I was playing with have had more hole-in-ones than anybody I know in the last 5 years. So I'm at 7. And
wow.
That's to me incredible. So that makes me kind of feel good. Like, I ticked this box. I really was able to,
good luck.
Yeah, good luck. I was able to prove that to myself that I can be a fun playing partner if I have to be.
Well, it's a great thing to aspire to be, because at the end of the day, a game of golf finishes on the 18th, right?
It finishes on the 19th. Yes.
Or 19th, sorry. Finishes in the bar after. But
so emotion, I've been trying to take it out of that the reviewing process forever, as well as all these other things that that there's rankings out there that take those things into consideration. So, for example, exclusivity is a big one, right? People think, oh, okay, I finally got to go here, so I can't cut it down because it's impossible to get to. If I cut it down, I'll never get to go again. So exclusivity always plays a role, right? To people. Amenities. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, it's the most amazing clubhouse I've ever seen, and that's fair. I mean, that's a fine comment, but it has no place in rating golf courses unless that's a criteria. Like how's the clubhouse? Oh, incredible. The best thing I've ever seen. Halfway houses. I've heard people bragging about, the sausage at the halfway station at Sunningdale, or the burger dog at Olympic Club, or the sushi at Brohof Slott in Sweden, or I don't know, whatever the 3-course meal that you have at every Japanese course when you stop. I mean, and we can go on and on and on, right, about that type of stuff. Nothing to do with evaluating a golf course, unless, of course, you're evaluating only the experience or something else, right? And there's other things, shower pressure. Like, how many times have we heard people say, Friar's Head had the best shower pressure of any place I've ever been, right? Like, okay, so what? If you want to drown, you go to Friar's Head. Big deal.
There's I've got a friend who rates benches in golf courses, which I think is quite obscure.
Yeah, and it's all fun, and those are their own individual rankings, but I don't consider those things unless that's part of the criteria, right? For the regular criteria, look, and again, it's not a science, as we know. It's subjective. So in my subjective mind, I'm trying to eliminate those things. Do I succeed with it all the time? I don't know. Probably not, but whatever.
So moving on to your travel. So you've obviously traveled the world and played every top 100 golf course and so many more. You now have a business called Lockhart Travel Club. Can you tell us a wee bit about it?
Absolutely. We do.
Yeah, we do. So, it's top 100.
Yeah. So that's a really fun and unique project that we're working very hard on, and that is very inspiring and amazing, and many different things that many different things that I could call it at the moment. So very rewarding as well. So the Lockhart Travel Club. Little backstory on that, just quickly on the name, and of course people could read this, but most people won't have heard that name. So why Lockhart? So in the late 1800s, a gentleman, Scottish linen merchant by the name of Robert Lockhart, had moved to New York, and he was traveling back and forth, importing linen into the New World. On one fateful journey in late 1877. He brought a couple of crates of these funny-looking sticks that his buddy, Old Tom Morris, had created. He introduced his friends in New York to these funny-looking sticks, and they started knocking these little balls around in apple orchards, eventually coining themselves the Apple Tree Gang. This Apple Tree Gang later went on to form the St. Andrews Golf Club. And that essentially made Robert Lockhart, the first ever golf traveler. So, or golf explorer, let's say. And
for people that don't know, St. Andrews is the oldest golf club in America.
Exactly. Yeah, it was the first one. So that's that's very well said. And so anyway, it's in his spirit and honor that we are undertaking this amazing journey of global golf exploration. We go around the world. I think in 2024, we're going to see 19 different countries. So there's opportunities to play some of the best, if not the best, courses in 19 different countries. And the reason I say some of the best is because, America, U.S. is a pretty big country, and we're not going to play all the best courses in America, but we have the opportunity to play some of the very best ones. So that's really exciting. So, we will take trips to places like South Africa and Japan and even China, to see some places that would prefer not to be mentioned, let's say. So I can't just openly talk about them, but those are opportunities that that we are so fortunate to have as a private travel club, that we just love to share with people. We've been so fortunate with all the traveling around the world, and met a lot of people, and it's just amazing that we have the opportunity to share some of the best adventures with this group, and that's Lockhart. And so, Lockhart is, let's say, put it like this: it's an invitation only, private, high-end golf travel club. Very specifically, it's not a golf society. It's nothing like that. You don't manage your handicap there. It is for probably a niche of people that they have time. All the trips, they last about usually about a week long. So you have to have a fair bit of time or be prioritizing golf and golf travel like that. And then a fair bit of resources as well, because anytime you're traveling around the world, there's costs associated with that. And especially if you're going to, play the best courses in the world. So if you look, as everybody would know, if you look at the US and you go to the US and you have invitations and you go to play some really amazing private clubs there, that's always going to be, there's always costs associated with that trip. And that's a lot different than what we see in like Europe or the UK or whatever, a lot of other areas. And that's just the nature of those situations. Accommodation wise, we stay in amazing places and we have amazing non-golf experiences. That's the best thing I can say about it. From people came, so we had a trip to the Netherlands, to give you an example, this last year, obviously very close to my heart. We started everybody off with on the first day when they arrived that evening with I will say an all-world canal tour that ended at an amazing Michelin star restaurant. In that case, they're not all Michelin star. Don't worry about that. But an amazing Michelin star restaurant with a idyllic boat tour, a couple-hour private boat tour. Sorry, that's a little bit different. So it's an old classic Salome boat. That'd be the equivalent of going to play Sunningdale or something, right? In terms of boating. Amazing. So, and that, that's the kind of stuff that we're doing. We went to Japan, visiting the best courses in the country, which are, extremely difficult to have an opportunity to go see. And then ate in some of the most amazing places as well. So it's a combination of, it's not just the golf and the golf travel, but it's really for people that they're into their travel, like passionate about it, basically. So it's a perfect combination of things.
Superb. You must have a lot of fun taking people around.
It's not the worst job in the world. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it can't be. That's absolutely superb. And how would people, if you wanted to get in contact, how would they, just through, is there a website or?
There's this is since just very, very recently, but one of the things that people can do is they can look on top100golfcourses.com. It's in it's in the slider that goes across there's a mention of it. It's also in the navigation on top as well, so you can find something about it. And if you're interested, you can fill in a very short form there, and then our team, perhaps myself, will get back to you and have a chat about it.
Superb. Right, I'm going to move on to 3 questions. One question I like to ask everyone, but we're going to get a bit nerdy now, okay? So top 5 golf courses, favorite, not top 5 best.
Yeah. I throw that one into, I'm going to throw favorite into experiences. Like it's a okay. A little bit bigger type of thing. So my number one, it's funny because this is pretty timely. I think I even made an Instagram post about this recently, but my number one is probably this course in Brazil that I just absolutely love, and I love going down there. It's called Santa Paciência. I won't necessarily number these, but let's say these are my favorite experiences, right? Schenken Bay is one of my favorites. That is just such a unique experience. That's one in China. You're kind of alone there, and there's a lot of staff, and it's a Core Crenshaw course. And, it's an amazing course as well. Very unique. South Cape Owners Club, which is actually a public course in Korea. And that is one of my favorite places on the planet to go. And the experience of going there is just surreal. Like when I go, I'd like to stay for a week or longer. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So it doesn't really get that much attention, but even every golf architecture nut, I don't care. I would send anybody there. It's amazing. And then there's a couple, some a little bit more boring ones, I suppose. So, Cypress, Pine Valley, and Augusta, you can't have a list of favorites if you've played them without having those on the list. So they're going to be experience-wise, also course-wise, obviously, they're just amazing, right? So all those, that's my answer. 3 exciting ones and 3 kind of boring ones, although not really if you got the opportunity.
And just on that note, who's your favorite architect?
That's a way more complicated answer, but I'm going to say that I'm gonna kind of like take the easy way out of that, and I'm gonna say that my favorite classic architects are McKinsey, Colton, Simpson.
Fair enough.
That's always the same. My favorite modern architects are Doak, Core Crenshaw, and Fazio.
Fazio, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's well, I mean, I'm just going to say this. That's it, because a lot of people will be like, "Oh, Fazio, how can you say that?" Well, look, you can get really nerdy into minimalism and whatever, and you can look at golf architecture also from a perspective of a business. And he is by far the most successful businessman ever to tread foot in golf course architecture, and that you cannot very easily argue that makes him the most successful golf architect in the world as well. And in the beginning, I probably was in the masses that maybe didn't love him as much, but I've grown to have a very deep appreciation for what he is able to do. There are certain circumstances where if I had enough money and the right property, which is the wrong property for the other guys, I'd go to Fazio every time. I wouldn't even think about it. And unfortunately, he's not that young anymore, so I don't know who fills his shoes once he's gone, because what he does, I don't think there's anybody else that can do that. So that's how I'll preface that, but definitely makes him one of my favorites. And then I've got guys that are my favorites in terms of renovations, actually, which is a completely different world. And I have all the respect for these guys as well. And I wish that, well, at least the first guys, Martin Ebert and Tom McKenzie, both good friends of mine, and they are the best. They've done the best renovations that I've ever experienced. Not having played Oakmont pre-renovation, right, which is very an amazing renovation, of course. But Hirono and Turnberry are two of the courses I just absolutely love, and the renovations I played both of them before. I think will go down in history as two of the greatest renovations that have ever happened. I'm just blown away by them, basically. So I'd love to see them get more opportunities to design courses on great properties and develop their own style, for example.
Out of interest, what makes a great renovation? We don't
have time for that.
We'll get into it another time.
Yeah, no. I couldn't. Yeah, I mean, we can go on just like with all the architecture and stuff. We kind of go back to square one and start over and start going through it. But it's the ability to take. I'll try to keep it as short as I can. The ability to take something with, let's say, great bones or the potential to have something great, and then bring that back. Have it be able to mesh well with a modern game, yet be able to hold on to the initial greatness that it had when it was initially designed. I suppose, I don't know. That's just off the cuff, for lack of better way to say it. I think it's pretty tough.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And actually in that, so I had some other, there's some, big up and comers in the U.S. that I have a huge amount of respect for, and I think they'll be doing a lot more great work. That's like Andrew Green, who did Oak Hill, Kyle Franz, who did Mid Pines. Of course, the guys from Renaissance Golf, which are doing amazing things. Brian Schneider, Clyde, Angela Moser. I love those guys and the work that they're doing. So Hans and Wagner are doing a bunch of renovations. Universally loved, obviously. That's why they're getting those jobs regularly, doing more of their own work and stuff like that as well. So those are all big names, and they're all among my favorites. Even though I know, I kind of copped out of that question a little bit, rather than just saying one. But
no, I think it's important that it's such a wide spanning thing, golf course architecture, that having one is more of a cop out than actually having a range of different people who did different things well, I'd say.
Yeah, good save. Thanks.
No, don't worry. I've got your back, David. But thank you very much for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you on back soon.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks so much, James.
David, thank you very much for giving me your time. I'm sure we'll have you on the pod again. It's fascinating listening to your outlook on golf. For everyone else, if you need to get in touch, it's James at top100golfcourses.com or get me on the Instagram. And remember, play fast, lunch slow.